Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
Hot dogs, that's right, it's me, your host, Old Heart, aka Jared, aka Dr. Don't Give a Fuck, aka this is Coffee and Contemplation. That's right, another Old Heart Radio podcast, another winner chicken dinner. If you don't know what you're listening to, then you probably never listened to this podcast before. If you know what you're listening to, then welcome back. You're a hot dog. And I'm saying the words hot dog. Yes, H-O-T-D-O-G. One word. Right. Congratulations, listeners. You have finally been named. It's been a little while. I swear, it's been a little while since I've recorded a podcast. I know. And I just got to throw it out there. It's my own damn fault. I haven't been, Yes, thank you. Thank you for that applause. Always well timed. I haven't been in my creative mind. I haven't been in my, go kind of mindset. I've had, I don't know, just like I've had a hell of a fucking few days, a week, whatever you want. It's a string of fucking time I've had, and I've just been kind of in my head. Really just fucking wondering what the hell I'm doing. But while I was kind of in that slump, and I call it a slump, or aka a funk, aka, a low. And I did some research, excuse me, by the way. I did some, digging into Jack Kirby, aka the King, aka Jacob Kurtzberg. If you don't know who Jack Kirby is, then you probably are not a fan of comic books whatsoever. Jack Kirby is we wouldn't have modern comic books without Jack Kirby. All credit due to Stan Lee and early figures like Gil Kane and Joe Simon and Bill Finger and the Schuster. But Jack Kirby gave us modern comics. I'm just going to say that. Without Jack Kirby, we would not have what we have. And he started off life as Jacob Kurtzberg. Like I said, he was born on August 28th, 1917 in New York City. And it's kind of fitting that a lot of the, Avengers, a lot of the Marvel characters are based in New York. When such influence came from artists that lived in New York as well. I think that's kind of interesting. Jack Kirby was not his original name. It wasn't even his original pen name. He used several pen names, including Jack Curtis for a while. And eventually he settled on Jack Kirby. The reason why he had so many different pen names was because back in the day, working on comics, like working on a comic strip, working on a comic book, my God, was laughable. Like, people would just think you were a fucking joke. You were a failed artist, so you were working on comics, which is insane. Absolutely insane. But he started off, just working at a Lincoln newspaper syndicate. He had a couple of runs on comic strips. He eventually met Joe Simon while he was doing the Blue Beetle in the 1940, from January to March in 1940. And there, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby came up with arguably one of the most iconic superheroes of our time right now, and that maybe is just because of Marvel at the moment, the MCU at the moment, but Captain America. And Captain America went on to become a ridiculously popular comic book, and we're talking actually selling million copies of a comic in 1941. That shit's nuts. So Joe Simon and Jack Kirby created Captain America, and then they were sent off to war. They got drafted into World War II. And that lasted for a couple of years for Jack Kirby from 1943 to 1945. But when he got back, him and Joe Simon tried to get work again together because they were a dynamic team, which Kirby would be a part of many dynamic teams in the future. But him and Joe Simon, they had something that clicked for people back in the day. And let's see, they worked at Harvey Comics. They made Western comics. They even started the trend of romance comic books, which seems so fucking crazy to me. I've never thought about reading a romance comic book. Romance comic books, I imagine, are for like the kids of moms who constantly have soap operas playing. Like they go out and like, oh hey honey, I got you a new comic. It's young romance. I'm not into it. But they were really well received apparently. Apparently they were really popular. Which seems crazy to me. Shit. Shout outs to all you hot dogs who are listening to this podcast. Congratulations, you're a listener. Shout outs to my friends and family for always putting up with my bullshit. Shout outs to, myself. I'm going to shout out myself. Why? Because sometimes you just need it. So let's see. Eventually, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby parted ways. And Jack Kirby ended up working at what would be Marvel comic books. And we all know this kind of loose story of how, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created a litany of characters, right? Including the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the Silver Surfer, Galactus, the Avengers, the Incredible Hulk, a litany of characters that would go on to become, modern mythology. And without Jack Kirby, arguably, I think you should put. I'm not trying to knock Stan Lee because I have a deep respect for Stan Lee as well. But I think it should be Jack Kirby and Stan Lee created these characters because Stan Lee. I mean, he brought a lot to the table. And I say this as somebody who does not draw, somebody who is not visually artistic whatsoever. I write. Okay, and I feel you, Stan, but like Jack Kirby brought so much to the table when it came to his creations. Like we're talking about not just the characters themselves and the character designs. We're talking about the world and that he created around them, and the atmosphere that he created around them, and like things that still influence comic books today, like the Kirby Crackle, which is a way to depict energy, or fields of energy or whatever in space or in open air. It's fucking wild and beautiful at the same time. His artwork was fucking beautiful. So shout outs to Stan Lee. Yes, amazing creator, rest in peace. But shout outs to Jack Kirby as well. Rest in peace as well. So Kirby basically, he went from Marvel to DC because he was getting kind of shafted at Marvel. I'm not going to go too much into that. He was getting kind of shafted at Marvel, and he would continue to be shafted by Marvel later on. But he went over to DC and he created his what is dubbed the Fourth World. He created 3 new titles for DC. One was Mr. Miracle, The Forever People, and New Gods. And he also did a little bit of Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. But and the reason I'm doing this podcast is because I just picked up Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle, and it's exactly what you'd expect. Jack Kirby blows the story out of the water. He creates these amazing characters, these colorful characters, these big characters, but they're also, even though they're not human, they are so human. It's so interesting. And I'm really looking forward to getting into the rest of it. I really want to get an omnibus of the Fourth World saga. But so he jumped to DC for a bit. He created a litany of characters again, and then he went back to Marvel. And one of the things that Kirby did this entire time was he freelanced for a lot of these companies, and he was using these characters that were characters that were owned by these companies, right? So like Captain America became owned by Marvel Comics. The Hulk, the Incredible, was owned by Marvel Comics. The Fantastic Four was owned by Marvel Comics. Mr. Miracle was owned by DC. Orion from the New Gods was owned by DC. Darkseid was owned by DC. And these characters weren't his original characters, so he didn't get to keep any of his original artwork. So he kept going back and forth from these companies trying to make a goddamn living, becoming a legend while he was doing it. A person that will live in immortality for as long as comic book mythology exists. And he didn't get any of his original pages back. And through years and years of struggle and fucking fighting with those companies, after giving so much of himself to them, he finally got maybe 20, I think by best estimates, it's like something like 2,100 pages out of 10,000 that he had created during his time in the early, 50s, 60s, and 70s with these, not 50s, but 60s and 70s with these companies. It's fucking bullshit. It's absolute disrespect. And actually, this kind of behavior from these big companies is what led to artists and creators later on saying fuck you to Marvel and DC and creating Image Comics, which mad respect to those crew. And I guarantee you that they all know how badly Jack Kirby was treated. I want to talk about his artwork for just a little second here. His artwork was like realistic, but also so imaginary. Like, it was so fucking cool. It was like it was, I don't know, bright, colorful. It moved, like the way he started using panels where he'd have characters' arms or limbs stretching from one panel to the next. Really kind of helped develop a new type of art form for comic books. He was a master of sequential art, and he just wanted to always include, I think, something fun and something that would drive your imagination, because I don't think he ever forgot that although these were amazing stories, they were comic books and they were meant to be fun. So shout outs to Jack Kirby. We wouldn't have our modern mythology without him. I can't express enough gratitude to that creative soul. And speaking of expressing gratitude, thank you for all you dear listeners, all you dear hot dogs who keep listening to this goddamn podcast. You're amazing. So go out there and use your brains for good. Every day is a good day to ripen up that coconut. And as we always try to end this podcast with, shout out to Yellow Teeth on this one, keep your stick on the ice.